Mile High Sports Radio's Afternoon Drive. Friday, April 14th installment of the program. And we are cruising right along, getting ready for the weekend. We'll finally have a playoff opponent for the Denver Nuggets. We'll figure out the Colorado Avalanche's playoff future coming up here soon enough. And to talk a little NBA, NHL postseason from a betting perspective, let's bring in our guy, Patrick Everson. You can follow him on Twitter at PatrickE_Vegas. Does a great job covering all things sports betting in Nevada for Vegas Insider. He's also a contributor at Fox Sport. But most importantly, he's a Colorado native. That is the most important fact here. And Patrick, let me just set the scene for you here real quick. 4 days of 75-plus degree weather, and you wake up today to 45 degrees and snowy. So I think this is one of the days where you're probably grateful to be in Las Vegas and not back home in Colorado.
Absolutely. But I will tell you, my blood is so thin now, it's just awful. But it was thick when I lived there. I was a cross-country and track guy, and I'd be out in, late October cross-country meets and just the tank top and shorts and no sleeves, 20 degrees, and it's drizzling sideways, and I'm just like, let's go. Let's go for a run. Let's go kick some people's tails here and have a little fun. So, but yes, I totally relate to that. And then tomorrow it'll probably be 70 again, right?
Yeah, that's probably the expectation. And I mean, I was running around all week, T-shirt, shorts, whatever it might be. And today it's back to the pants and the sweatshirts. So such is life, but it's a great time to stay inside and bet some sports. And obviously we've got plenty of betting to do with the NBA and the NHL postseasons on the horizon. And let's dive right into it, my man. Appreciate you giving us a few minutes here. And we got two play-in games tonight between the Chicago Bulls and the Miami Heat, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The winner of those respective games will be the 8th seed in their respective conferences. And, of course, the matchup between Oklahoma City and Minnesota will decide who plays the Denver Nuggets in the first round. I know, obviously, you're out there in Vegas. I've seen you tweeting left and right about all these numbers, where the books are at. What's your overall feel for these games tonight, which are essentially mirroring each other? The Chicago Bulls catching the 5 points on the road at Miami, and Oklahoma City catching 5 with the hook in Minnesota.
Right. And again, we'll shop around. It might be off a half a point or up or down half a point one way or another. But, yeah, basically mirror images on the line. A couple of perspectives from behind the counter. This is relatively fresh, some stuff this afternoon from PointsBet USA. And it's interesting on the spread. Ticket count is almost 3-1 on Oklahoma City, but money is just a little bit shy of 2-1 on Minnesota. So I think that's kind of fascinating. And even the money line is really two-way. It's like 54% of tickets on Oklahoma City, 51% of money on Minnesota. So basically dead even money on the money line, which is instead of laying or taking the 5 points. So definitely some interesting activity on this game at PointsBet at least. And then a little bit earlier today from BetMGM, they had a little bit more definition here, a lot more of a lean toward the Thunder, toward the underdog on the spread, and then on the money line, a little bit kind of a mix. You had almost 4-1 tickets on Oklahoma City, but 4-1 money on Minnesota. Now that was earlier today, so it's probably shifted up a fair amount because as you two know, and I'm sure your listeners are learning as they learn more and more about sports betting, the overwhelming bulk of tickets and money comes in closer to tip-off, and that game's a later tip-off still, so we've got some time. There's going to be quite a bit more bet into that. Perhaps there might be more bet into it in the next couple of hours than has been bet into it over the whole last couple of days combined. So that could certainly shift. But, yeah, some interesting betting on that game for sure.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, obviously, this newer dynamic that the NBA has implemented. In regards to the splits, how much do you think it's reflective of one team in Oklahoma City and Chicago having won their previous game going up against a team that, even though they're considered, air quotes, the higher-rated seed, having lost the game? How much do you think the recent perception plays a role into how these games are being bet early before the game?
Oh, I think there's probably some recency bias, but generally speaking, the average, the people like you and me and the public recreational bettors will probably be more influenced by that recency bias than people who really sit down and chop up numbers and do analytics and run simulations and those sorts of things. So I do think it's part of it though. You saw the Bulls get a big win over Toronto, and you saw the Thunder win as well. So I do think that I certainly think that plays into it a little bit with the way, especially as you look at some of these splits. But it's also, I'm not sure that everybody's like super engaged with the playoffs yet either. So even though, while I'm giving you out these splits number, and that's the thing, you shouldn't necessarily lean heavily into these splits to make your betting decisions. I think they're an interesting thing to know. You know what I mean? But what you don't know is how many bets have been made, how much money has been wagered. So, and the reason I bring that up is because I don't think people are really engaged on the playoffs yet, and I don't think they're necessarily engaged on these play-in games specifically. Although I do think when the Lakers played, I think people are engaged, especially here in Nevada. They're engaged on the Lakers all the time. So, and BetMGM is really bad to the Lakers. They don't want the Lakers coming anywhere near a championship, but because they are such a popular team. Warriors similarly. But I think people aren't really fully engaged yet. So while these numbers are out there, the splits are out there, and they're interesting, and maybe a component that maybe informs you a little, don't take it too far yet, because I don't think these are part of a big pot of tickets or money, if that makes sense.
With the Nuggets, obviously here in Denver being the number one seed going into the Western Conference, how do the books kind of sit for the Denver Nuggets as they go here? Because obviously being a one seed, it means that you took care of business, but there's also a lot of pressure that comes with that as well.
Absolutely. This is, and I'm glad you brought this up. There's Cody, right?
Yeah.
Just making sure I know who I've got. I'm listening, so sometimes I'm watching on video, and I can and your voices are certainly distinctive, but I just want to make sure. So what I thought was interesting about this, I talked earlier in the week about this, Cody, with Motoy Pearson, who is a very widely respected odds maker. He's been in the business for a while, and he's currently with WynnBET, which I believe they operate in Colorado too as well, right? Everybody operates in Colorado.
Everybody.
You got a phenomenal market there. I'm telling you, you guys don't even know how good you have it. It's honestly, in ways, it's better than Vegas, just so you know. But what I thought was fascinating is what Motoy said is the number one seeds in both conferences, the Denver Nuggets and Milwaukee Bucks, they would love to see, what they would love to see is a Nuggets-Bucks championship series. Absolutely love it. He said Nuggets and Bucks would be awesome results for the house. He says that both are number one seeds. We are proud of that. It's probably with the way some of these teams, with how popular some of these teams are that aren't the Nuggets and the Bucks, Lakers, Warriors, Celtics, Sixers, etc. You can see it happening, but it's still a pretty good feat of odds making when the two number one seeds aren't damaging you at all, especially when those teams weren't projected to necessarily be the number one seeds going into the season. So they would love to see the Nuggets do well behind the counter at WynnBET, and I'm guessing some other books wouldn't mind that either. But I just thought that was a fascinating perspective from WynnBET. As far as and I did a piece that's up on Vegas Insider right now with BetMGM, and I guess the most interesting thing I can say about that, Cody, is that Halvor Eglund, who's an odds maker for BetMGM nationwide, didn't really even mention the Nuggets one way or the other. So they're probably not that concerned about them. Maybe they're just a small winner as opposed to a big winner, but he never mentioned them as being an outcome that was concerning for BetMGM.
And that's not surprising. I think, our local listeners probably scoff at that because they're like, the narrative out here locally is nobody takes us serious. I mean, just look at the MVP conversation with Joel Embiid. But how rare is that for not just one seed, but both one seeds in the Eastern and Western Conference to essentially, the books would welcome the top dog, which, in a lot of people's minds, when you're the number one seed, you should be the perceived favorite to come out of that conference. How rare is it for the 2 1 seeds to essentially be on the side of the book this go around?
I would say it's probably pretty rare. Now, I mean, in the case of the Bucks, the Nuggets odds were fairly short most of this season. And the Bucks, I believe, were 10-1 or shorter most of the season, but still, for the 2 number one seeds to be good outcomes for the book and maybe not even favored to get out. Although in the Nuggets case, I think that's definitely the case. I think if you had to start asking odds makers to set odds for the Western semis and the Western finals, you might see a spot where the Nuggets, even as the home team and the number one seed, may not be favored. Now the Bucks, I think it's different because the Bucks are actually favored to win the NBA championship. They overtook Boston. They've been unbelievable for the last 2.5 months or so, just playing amazing basketball. So I think I think Bucks, the odds makers certainly like it if they can get themselves in a position like this, and I can understand the Colorado fans and so forth being kind of scoffing at it a little bit. Wait a minute, you're disrespecting us. Look, if the odds makers are really wrong, and I understand it, but if the odds makers are wrong, the bettors will tell them. you know. So the odds are what they are, and the bettors will tell the odds makers through their action if they're way out of line. And they're not really saying that so far with the Nuggets. And I think we all saw a little bit of, dents in the Nuggets' armor over these last few weeks and concern about whether this team can get to the finish line or not.
Yeah, we've been talking about it till we're blue in the face. I mean, it's like for the first 3 quarters of the season, you got a team that looks like they're, going to be well on their way to contending for an NBA title. In the last 4 or 5 weeks has been anything but that. It's been a crapshoot, to say the least. But let's talk about some of the teams here that the books are maybe a little bit heavier on. I was reading your story on Vegas Insider, and obviously, Boston's a big public team because of their fandom and their fan base.
Sure.
Phoenix after they acquired Kevin Durant. What are some of where does the book not want teams to end up? You mentioned the Lakers. I'm assuming Phoenix and Boston could be woven into those layers as well.
Boston can probably be woven into those layers. And the reason for that is kind of what we just discussed a moment ago, what you're enjoying in Colorado, and that is this just bonanza of sports betting. Well, Massachusetts legalized retail brick-and-mortar betting. My dog's going nuts here.
Oh, good.
Sorry.
We love dogs here.
Blossom, you need to be quiet. Massachusetts went live with retail betting, brick-and-mortar betting, in-person betting, I guess is maybe the better way to put it, in February, and then went online. Mobile and online betting opened in March. And the books have just been, Boston bettors are just lining up to bet on the Celtics, on the Bruins, on the Red Sox. They're probably going to line up a little bit on the Patriots, maybe not as much as those previous 3, because at least, or certainly the Bruins and the Celtics, who you can absolutely make championship cases for. But I don't think the Celtics would necessarily be a good outcome. But it is interesting at BetMGM, which also has a pretty good market in Arizona. They've got, Arizona has really taken to this in much the way that Colorado has. Hal Eglin at BetMGM said the Suns would be a winner, at least at the moment. They wouldn't mind having the Suns at all. And honestly, the reason the Suns are such a short number is because of the moves they made at the trade deadline. I mean, you add Kevin Durant, and all of a sudden, things get much more serious, and the Clippers can't be liking having a first-round matchup, I guess. I mean, look at the odds for the first-round series. It's a 4-5 series, and Phoenix is like minus 600 or something. That's pretty wild. That tells you a lot right there.
One thing to ask too, looking at the Milwaukee Bucks, the stretch that they had in the second half of the season was incredible. They went 29-7. How has that maybe impacted their title odds coming into the postseason? Has it influenced it? In terms of improvement? What do you read of this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a lot of adjustment just over these last. I mean, I guess let's start here. A lot of people, when they see adjustment, they want were they 30-1 and now they're 3-1? Well, sometimes it's a big adjustment, even when there's not a whole lot of room to move, and there really wasn't a whole lot of room for Milwaukee to move. Cody, they were, but BetMGM had the Bucks at 6-1 up until February 6th, which was about almost 2 weeks into that 16-0 run that the Bucks went on that really got the ball rolling for them. And he said then they started to shorten up, and they stopped at just about every price along the way from plus 550 all the way down to plus 250. They got as short as plus 250 at BetMGM. I believe they're now at plus 275, but they're in that range. You could have had them along the way at much better numbers than plus 250, plus 275. You could have got that 6-1 in February. You could have got, plus 550, plus 500, plus 400, plus 350. You could have gotten much better numbers. So it certainly impacted things, and that was in part due to what we were seeing, the eye test, how good this team is, and also correspondingly how bettors were betting them. And again, this is from Hal Eglin at BetMGM. He said there's certainly been an uptick in action on the Bucks over the past couple of months. Some bettors are certainly excited about the Bucks. However, he did say we're still in a good spot should the Bucks take home the title. They'll be one of the teams we'll be cheering for throughout the postseason. So kind of similar to what I was telling you about WinBet. They wouldn't mind seeing this number 1 seed take it all the way, and the same could probably be said of the Denver Nuggets, because he didn't even mention the Nuggets in the conversation we had.
Yeah, which is interesting to say the least. But our guest is Patrick
Sure.
Everson. Be sure to check him out at VegasInsider.com. All right, one more before we cut you loose. Appreciate you for a few minutes here, my man. And let's change gears here with the Colorado Avalanche, the defending Stanley Cup champions in the NHL. They're coming in right now at 7-1 to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. Obviously, the news came out yesterday that they will be without Gabriel Landeskog for the entirety of the NHL's playoffs, but that's not, anything new for them this year because they have been without him for the entirety of this season as well. But you've got Boston at 3-1, who's absolutely incredible, and they've been on an absolute tirade, followed by the Avalanche and Edmonton, both at 7-1. So the Avalanche have dealt with a medley of injuries over the course of the season, Landeskog among others. I find it interesting that they're number 2 in odds. Obviously, I think they should be up there, but tied with Edmonton. What do you make of the odds for the Avalanche to potentially win the Cup, and how are the books looking at it, considering this team has dealt with a plethora of injuries? They're going to be without their captain, and they also have a goaltender that doesn't have much playoff experience in Alexander Georgiev.
Right. This is definitely interesting, and I literally just a little bit before I came on air with the two of you, I just finished updating at VegasInsider.com an update on Stanley Cup futures, and this is off of information from Christian Cipollini, who is a sports trader with BetMGM, and the Avalanche are a good outcome are a winning outcome for the book, but I wouldn't necessarily say they're a good outcome. Early in the season, the Avalanche were taking a ton of tickets and money, and not just at BetMGM, but everywhere. And recall, they opened the season as a favorite, as they rightly should have, and they remained the favorite for a few weeks until the Bruins just got up to such an overwhelmingly good start and then maintained it all season long. I mean, the Bruins are just a juggernaut right now, and just a ridiculous record. And they're not letting off the gas at all. I mean, the last 16 games prove that. But the Avalanche, a small winner for BetMGM, but what Christian told me, he said, I'd add them to our root against list because they are such a small winner. They're rooting against the Bruins. This is kind of the anti-Bucks Nuggets situation, at least for BetMGM. The Bruins are trouble, and that is because, in part, the Bruins started the season at like 28-1, 25-1, somewhere in that range, and some bettors got on them early with some good numbers and stacked up some liability. So the Bruins are going to be trouble. I think they would definitely take the Avalanche title over the Bruins, but they'd rather see a team like the Devils or our Vegas Golden Knights here, or Carolina or Dallas make a run at the title.
Well, we shall see. The playoffs are ahead for both the NBA and the NHL, and Patrick Everson is breaking all things down over at Vegas Insider. Be sure to give him a follow on social media at @PatrickE_Vegas on Twitter. Check him out at Fox Sports as well. He's a contributor. And like we said, he's a Colorado native, so always welcome on this show. Patrick, Thank you so much for a few minutes. We'll do it again soon. Good luck with the postseason ahead, all right?
Absolutely. All hail Colorado Springs.
Yes.
Air Force Academy Hospital.
Love it, my man. All right, we'll do it again soon. Appreciate you, Patrick.
You bet.
It's going to be a wild playoffs. Everyone's going to be exciting once all the matchups are finalized. I'm sure the bets are going to be rolling in, which teams win and which team wins and how many games.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
It's wild.
I love chatting with Patrick.
Dude, he's such a nice guy, and he's an encyclopedia of information.
Just like rapid fire. Like just all you got to do is set him up and let him run. And that's what I love. Like, the information he gives people is, I feel like information, and to his point, like sports betting has rapidly becoming legal across the country. Colorado is excellent. Arizona is excellent. He's been doing this for years out there in Las Vegas. And I mean, he is like the Adam Schefter of the sports betting world when it comes to Vegas.
It's a good, another great reason why people, if you live in Colorado, you don't live in Utah.
We love it. Be sure to check out Patrick, VegasInsider.com. Let's hit a break. We'll come back. We'll react to what he had to say. We'll talk about these playing games and mix in a little sporting conversation. Afternoon Drive back in a few.